Imagine you need to coordinate a highly dangerous, complex tactical operation with 5 other people. One mistake means someone dies. But there is a catch. You cannot speak. You cannot write. You cannot text. You can only use your hands, your eyes, and a few guttural, instinctive sounds. Let's call one of these people Otis. Otis is standing in freezing mud, clutching a heavy, fire-hardened wooden branch. 50 yards away, hiding in the tall, windswept grass, is a predator that weighs 3 times as much as he does. Otis needs the person to his left to flank the animal slowly, moving only when the wind blows to mask their footsteps. He needs the person to his right to wait for his exact physical signal to throw their spear. If he makes a loud noise, the animal charges. If someone misinterprets his hand gesture, the ambush fails, and they become the prey. He has to communicate a multi-step tactical plan using nothing but frantic pointing, tense facial expressions, and a very intense, desperate stare. For a massive chunk of human history, this was our entire communication system. Like other primates, our earliest ancestors relied on a basic biological vocabulary of grunts, screams, bared teeth, and physical posturing. This ancient software was incredibly effective for immediate physical realities. It was an alarm system tied directly to the nervous system. A sudden, high-pitched, piercing shriek meant danger. A low, rhythmic, repetitive grunt meant food. Standing tall and puffing out your chest meant back off. This system kept us alive for millions of years, but it had a terrifying, isolating limitation. You can point at a predator standing right in front of you. You can scream when you step on a venomous snake. You can smile when you are full. But you cannot mime the concept of tomorrow. You cannot grunt a detailed warning about a rival tribe that might cross the river next week. You cannot use hand gestures to explain that the berries are sweet in the summer, but deadly poisonous in the winter. Our survival was entirely trapped in the present tense. Our ancestors lived in a world where knowledge could only be shared if it was happening right in front of their eyes. If Otis figured out a brilliant new way to track a deer, but no one was there to watch him do it, that knowledge was locked inside his head. When he died, the knowledge died with him. Every generation had to start almost entirely from scratch, learning by direct imitation or brutal trial and error. We were intelligent, but we were silent prisoners of the now. Then, a biological miracle happened, and it came with a deadly cost. Over thousands of generations, as our ancestors began walking upright, the architecture of our skulls and necks shifted. The human voice box, the larynx, dropped lower in the throat. This seems like a minor anatomical adjustment, but it changed the trajectory of the planet. Because the voice box dropped, the space above it expanded, turning the human vocal tract into a complex resonance chamber. Combined with a rapidly expanding brain and finer control of the tongue and lips, we suddenly possessed the hardware to produce a massive, endless range of distinct, highly controlled phonetic sounds. We didn't just have to point at the world anymore. We could describe it. We could label it. But evolution is ruthless, and it rarely gives a gift without taking something in return. Because our voice box dropped so low it crossed paths with our esophagus. This means that humans are the only mammals on Earth that can easily choke to death on their own food. Every time you swallow, a tiny flap has to perfectly cover your airway, or you die. Evolution decided that the ability to speak was so overwhelmingly crucial to our survival that it was worth the constant risk of choking to death just to eat lunch. But why? What was so important that we needed complex language? If you ask most people, they will tell you that humans developed language to coordinate hunts, to invent better tools, or to plan migrations. But evolutionary anthropologists have a much darker, much more fascinating, and slightly hilarious theory. We didn't invent language to talk about mammoths. We invented language to gossip. Think about Otis's tribe. There are about 50 to 100 people living closely together. In a harsh prehistoric environment, your survival depends entirely on the group. You need to know who you can trust. Who is a reliable hunter? Who is a coward when the wolf attacks? Who is secretly hoarding all the berries while everyone else is sleeping? Who is trying to mate with someone they shouldn't? In a small primate group, like chimpanzees, animals maintain social bonds and alliances by physically grooming each other. They sit in the dirt for hours, picking bugs out of each other's hair. It releases endorphins. It builds trust. But physical grooming takes time. You can only groom one chimpanzee at a time. If your tribe grows to 50 or 100 people, there simply aren't enough hours in the day to pick bugs out of everyone's hair and still have time to forage for food. Language became vocal grooming. It allowed us to maintain relationships with multiple people at once. Sitting around a fire, Otis could bond with 3 people simultaneously just by talking to them. More importantly, language allowed us to track social reputations. It allowed us to talk about people who weren't in the room. If Otis is a coward and runs away during a hunt, another hunter can go back to the camp and tell everyone else what Otis did. Suddenly, Otis is a social outcast. He won't get a share of the meat. He won't find a mate. Language was an evolutionary security system. It protected the tribe from free riders, liars, and selfish individuals. It allowed us to navigate the incredibly complex, invisible web of social politics. And this explains something very strange about modern humans. Think about the last time you sat down with a group of friends at a coffee shop. Did you discuss quantum physics? Did you strategize on how to build a better spear? Did you debate the migratory patterns of local wildlife? No. You probably talked about other people. You talked about who got a promotion, who is dating who acted terribly at the party last weekend. You are running the exact same ancient social tracking algorithm. Your survival depends on knowing where you stand in the hierarchy, and gossip is the data transfer that keeps you safe. But human communication didn't stop at gossip. Once we realized we could talk about people who weren't physically present, a terrifying and beautiful door opened in the human mind. We realized we could talk about things that didn't physically exist at all. This is known as the cognitive revolution. Animals communicate about reality. A monkey can tell another monkey, there is an eagle in that tree. But only a human can say, the eagle in that tree is the spirit of our dead ancestor. And if we do not leave it an offering of meat, the rains will not come. We began to invent shared fictions. We talked about river spirits. We talked about invisible gods in the sky. We invented ancient myths, origin stories, and shared tribal rules. We created concepts like honor, taboo, and justice, things you cannot touch, taste, or throw a spear at. This was the ultimate evolutionary cheat code. If you take 50 chimpanzees who have never met each other and put them in a stadium, it will result in an absolute bloodbath of panic and violence. They only trust the apes they personally know. But you can put 80,000 human strangers in a stadium, and as long as they believe in the same shared fiction, the same national anthem, the same sports team, the same religious symbol, or the same currency, they will cooperate perfectly. Language allowed humans to cooperate flexibly in massive numbers. It allowed us to organize thousands of strangers to build pyramids, launch ships, and eventually construct cities. We conquered the planet not because we had the sharpest claws or the thickest skin, but because we were the only animals that could tell each other stories. But speech has a fatal flaw. It is entirely tied to the breath. It is a vibration in the air. It fades the exact millisecond it leaves your mouth. If Otis has a brilliant idea, he can now tell his tribe. But if his tribe forgets it, or if a disease wipes out the elders, that story is gone forever. Oral traditions were powerful, but human memory is fragile. We were terrified of forgetting. We were terrified of disappearing into the void without a trace. So our ancestors did something deeply rebellious against the laws of nature. They walked into deep, pitch-black cave systems. They carried torches of animal fat that flickered and cast long, dancing shadows on the stone. They chewed up red ochre and charcoal in their mouths. They placed their hands flat against the cold, jagged rock walls, and they blew the pigment over their fingers. When they pulled their hands away, they left a perfect, permanent silhouette. A red handprint glowing in the dark. For the first time in planetary history, a thought could survive longer than the person who thought it. It was a primitive rebellion against death. It was the very first version of the internet, a physical hard drive meant to outlast the biological body. It was an ancient human screaming into the silence of time. I was here. I existed. Do not forget me. Now, fast forward 40,000 years to tonight. You are lying in bed, alone in a dark room. You are bathed in the harsh, artificial blue light of a perfectly smooth glass rectangle. You are utilizing an advanced supercomputer, relying on invisible electromagnetic signals bouncing off a network of cell towers, traveling through fiber optic cables running across the bottom of the ocean, connecting to satellites orbiting the Earth in a freezing vacuum. You possess the most godlike communication infrastructure in the history of the universe. You have access to the combined knowledge of every human being who has ever lived, literally resting in the palm of your hand. And what do you do with it? You open an app, you look at a highly curated picture of an acquaintance you haven't seen in 5 years. You analyze their social status. You wonder if they are happier than you. You check how many people approved of your last picture. You read rumors about a celebrity you will never meet. You send a tiny yellow cartoon face to someone miles away. You think you are engaging in high-tech, modern communication. You think you are completely detached from the dirt, the mud, and the caves of your ancestors. But strip away the glass screens. Strip away the microchips, the fiber optics, and the satellites. Turn off the Wi-Fi. You are still just a highly social primate, terrified of being left out of the tribe, terrified of falling down the hierarchy, terrified of being forgotten. You are using tiny glowing symbols on a wall to tell someone else in the dark, I am here, do you see me? If this video helped you understand yourself a little better, please leave a like and subscribe. It helps the channel more than you know. Take care and see you in the next one.